First discussing a famous line in Parasha Toldot that is very intriguing, and I'm going to share with you this concept. Um, First of all, I'll start with a light remark. You know that in the Parasha it says that Yaakov enters the room of Yitzchak to take the blessing, which he knows Yitzchak intends to give to Esav. And he's dressed with his skin and hairy um, gloves, and so that it make him feel that looks like Esav. And he comes in and he talks to, the Yitzchak asks him, "Are you Esav?" He says, "I am." He doesn't say, "I am Esav." He says, "I am." And Yitzchak, it says there that something is strange here. A kol Yaakov, ve'yadam yedei Esav. The voice sounds like Yaakov, but the hands are like Esav. What's going on? And the Torah tells us specifically that as Yitzchak is about to bless Ishmael, I'm sorry, Esav, bless him, the one who's in front of him, he's wondering. And the Torah says, "V'lo ikiro." He did not recognize him. Now, the way lo ikiro could mean perhaps that he did not know that it was Yaakov. But the other aspect is that he wasn't sure who he is, because his question is asking, the voice is one and the hand is a different. So the question is, on what basis did he decide that it was Esav? And so the lo ikiro could mean he did not recognize him. It means he didn't care who it was. Maybe it was Yaakov. Maybe he realized that maybe something was happening, and he knew that Rivka was a very great trickster, and that she loved Yaakov. Maybe in his mind there was all these subconscious thoughts. It couldn't be conscious because, in fact, when Esav comes in, Yitzchak is surprised. But the question nevertheless arises: if he saw two contradictory signs, on what basis did he decide that it was Esav? The Beit HaLevi makes a very interesting suggestion. He says that Esav understood that people are tricksters. We know that Yaakov realized that Lavan is a trickster, and he wanted to marry Rachel. And in order to make sure that he was marrying Rachel, he gave her a sort of a password, a sign that this way she will say one thing and she will say something, and then he will know that that's Rachel. Rachel, of course, in her kindness, not to embarrass her sister, gave those signs to Leah, and that's how Yaakov was tricked. So the concept of the idea of putting some sort of a password, so in case you're not sure that this is me, like an identity, like a password, people do make signs. So the Beit HaLevi makes a very interesting suggestion. He says that perhaps what happened was that Esav told Yaakov, to Yitzchak, when I come in, obviously, if Yaakov wants to trick us, he's going to come and pretend, speak with my voice, brusque, rough, aggressive. So if I come, I'm going to, as a trick, I'm going to speak with the language, with the voice of Yaakov. I'm going to speak gently. I'm not going to be rushed. I'm going to be delicate. I'm going to use the voice of Jacob. That's be the sign that this is me. Whereas Yaakov probably, if he ever came to trick us, he will use my voice, and then that shows that it is not me. And that's how we're going to trick him. So in comes, and that is also explained why, according to this, when Esav comes in, Yitzchak asking, "Who are you?" Because now, obviously, he was speaking maybe with the language, with the tone of Yaakov, and he was confused. In any case, it appears that maybe that was a trick. That was the sign. Esav was going to speak with the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are going to be with the hands of Esav. So that's what Yaakov means. A kol Yaakov, the voice of Jacob, which means it is Esav disguised as Jacob, and the hands of the right hands of Esav, which cannot be changed. And that's how we blessed it. So this shows in a way that when a person makes a trick, sometimes a person falls in his own trap. And we say in Psalm 94 that the enemies of Israel laid traps for us, but then they followed them in their own traps. As Haman prepared the tree to hang Mordechai, and precisely that tree he has hung himself. So that's a sign that an evil person, lays a trap to the righteous, and then he falls himself in that trap. But I want to discuss with you the other part, which is perhaps more important in this Parasha Toldot. We know that Rivka was very troubled in her pregnancy. She was very upset that there was a lot of pain and a lot of movement. Normally, it's something that shouldn't happen when a person is pregnant, so she's worried that something is troubling and maybe she's going to die. Rashi says that, that perhaps she realized that there were two fetuses in the womb, and that maybe one was going to, there were sort of different tensions and different, or maybe, I'm sorry, there was one fetus that was sort of schizophrenic, moving towards the idolatry when she passed a house by idols, and towards Hashem when she passed a house of people who believe in Hashem. And he thought, if this baby is going to be syncretistic, that syncretism is the ability to believe in this God and that God too. So that I don't want. That's idolatry. I want somebody who's going to believe in God. So she goes to the prophet, and the prophet tells her, no, don't worry about it. It's not only one person who has conflicting views. It's two people, two fetuses. Two nations will emerge, very different. One will go one way, one will go the other one. And sometimes one is going to dominate the other. They will not be able to live in peace. One will always be in conflict with another. And the older one will eventually, at the end of history, serve the younger. That's what the prophet told them. So we know that the prophecy was fulfilled, part of it, that Esau went in one direction, which according to the rabbis, Idumea is essentially become part of Rome, and first they were first Christians, and the Christians then become dominate Rome, and the Roman Empire becomes the exile in which the Jewish people is going to suffer. The last exile before the Messiah comes is going to be the Roman exile, which today we don't call it Roman, we call it Christian, we call it Western civilization, whatever we call it, but this is the exile in which we ourselves are. We suffered through the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Greeks, and now we are suffering through the Christian. So that is true. They are dominating us. And in a way, this is the older one, because this is the older brother, Esau, comes before Yaakov. He's going to serve the younger. What does that mean? So I thought of saying this, and then I realized that this idea is also said by the Samson of Hirsch, which says as follows, that in the end of history, the power of the spirit is going to win over the power of matter, or the physical. The power of Yaakov will be triumphant. Even though the power of Yaakov and Esau were in conflict throughout history, the power of its spirit will win out. But the power of the physical is not going to be destroyed. The power of Esau is not going to dead. It's going to transform itself into, as the Torah says, Ya'avod. He'll become a servant of the younger one. To put it in nicer, more elegant terms, the Western world will recognize that the younger one, the spirit of Jacob, is the correct one. And they will align themselves with this younger brother, with Israel. And that makes a lot of sense. Today, I explained that the Western world will finally find its meaning and its right role in being an ally of the people of the Torah, ally of Yaakov. As the prophecy says, it will serve the younger one, which means that there will be an element that will be of help to the propagation of the Jewish ideals. This makes a lot of sense today. I just want to make a regular comment that we see how the Western world, Christianity, the Christian world, is really turning in a great decline in terms of morality. You know, the multiplicity of genders that we have now, or the transgender and the homosexuality and the destruction of the nuclear family, the new kind of morality that we have in some way created in this world, which is the rejection of morality. All of these concepts, which are really what we call the decline of the West, are turning to a crisis, which hopefully, and this is my hope, as the prophecy says, eventually this civilization is going to realize that this is in no way, is not a solution. And in realizing in frustration that these things don't work, they will turn to realize that the message of Torah, the message of Judaism is the right one, and they will come themselves to align themselves with us, to help us, and to be able to continue to help the cause of the Spirit. And this, I hope, that's what the prophets were also viewing, that one day the nations will come and say, Torah. They will come to Zion to say, the Torah comes from it. We have to go and learn it. And that will be the fulfillment of this prophecy, V'rav Yavot Seir. I want to share this with you, even though it comes from the last week, because I thought that this was a very beautiful, very important concept. And I hope it gives us hope for our society as well.